These days, Australia makes some of the best wine in the world, and some of the best of those wines comes from this part of Australia, northeastern Victoria. Last century, the riches came from under the ground because this region, for a dazzling decade or two, yielded more than a third of all the gold being discovered in the world. It was also the place where Australia's most famous bushranger, or outlaw, lived and died. It was in this now tranquil area that Ned Kelly, in his homemade suit of armour, made his last stand. But today is not a day for the clanking of armour or for dancing on grapes. Here at Winton, in the centre of this rich and fertile region, is a day for the clanking of spanners and for stepping on the gas. Because Winton, a small town, is the site of one of the biggest car races in all of Australia. I'm Evan Green. It's my pleasure to welcome car racing fans across Australia and throughout America to the running of the Yokohama Winton 300. And this is the track where they'll be taking part. It's a 300-kilometre race, that's 186 miles around this tough, demanding, twisting track. They have to go around it 150 times, and on the way they'll stop to change drivers, add tyres and fuel. Now, it's a race for Group E touring cars, which in ordinary man's language is a race for standard motor cars, showroom cars. Now, to tell you more about it and to explain who's taking part and what the cars are, here's Ian Taylor.
Group E, or production touring cars, are not vastly different from what you purchase off the showroom floor. Apart from the visible, the signs, the decals, the advertising externally, internally, the driver's seat, the steering wheel and the roll cage are the visible changes. In this case, extra dials in a tachometer and temperature gauge have been added. The radio must stay. They preferred to keep the standard seats and standard steering wheel. A roll cage has been added in the back, plus the use of a two-way radio is permissible.
On the mechanical side, the wheels must be the same, but the tyres can be any production radial tyre. Underneath there, the brakes have to be the same, although brake pads can be changed to any compound. The suspension must remain the same, but the shock absorbers can be changed to any shock absorber that will fit on the standard fittings. Under the bonnet, nothing can be changed really. Engine management system must remain the same, perhaps a smaller battery. The turbo must remain the same boost, but in the exhaust pipe, it can alter from the first join back.
As you can see, there is very little difference between this road-going Toyota Supra and Ken Douglas's race car that's tipped to win the big one today. In a grid dominated by Japanese entries, we have Peter Fitzgerald on pole position after recording an excellent time of 1 minute 10.83 seconds in qualifying yesterday. On the front row of the grid beside him will be Ken Douglas, both of these drivers in Toyota Supras. Second row of the grid, John Burke and Kent Youlden. John Burke in the third of the Toyota Supras, Kent Youlden in the first of the Australian-made cars, a Ford EA Falcon. Third row of the grid, Glenn Seaton and David Morton. Glenn Seaton in one of the Leighton House Honda CRXs, and this car is one that will be in contention right throughout this long 300-kilometre race. Beside him, David Morton in the second of the Robinson Douglas Motorsport cars. These cars will certainly Ken Douglas on the front row of the grid. The number 10 car was the 1988 winner of this race. Peter Fitzgerald on pole position has won the race on 2 previous occasions. So it's going to be between the Toyota Supras and the little Honda CRXs as we see the national flag come down and the Yokohama Winton 300 gets underway for 1989. The 2 Supras of Douglas and Fitzgerald side by side through turn 1, and it looks like Peter Fitzgerald on the inside is going to take the jump and take the lead along the short Yokohama straight for the first time. Peter Fitzgerald from Ken Douglas, John Burke, Brett Youlden and David Morton. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then going back to Glenn Seaton is number 6 as they head up to Penrite Corner. That's our race leader, Peter Fitzgerald. opening up just a wee gap on Douglas as they head around. These two are going to fight this race out furiously. They've been neck and neck at each other right throughout the 1989 season in the Production Touring Car Championship. Peter Fitzgerald in the lead car there came off the better of the two, took off the championship, but it was Ken Douglas who won the 1988 event, and he wants 2 in a row in the Winton 300.
Douglas may be more of a tactical driver. He likes to take things a little bit cautiously in the opening laps. Fitzgerald is a sprinter. He can certainly win long distance events, but his idea will be to get out there and go as hard as he can, as quickly as he can, and try and make a break from Douglas, who is hanging onto his tail, not having any of that. And with only 149 laps to go, 1 down, it's Peter Fitzgerald across the line first from Ken Douglas. The Supers well and truly in the lead at the moment.
The little Leighton House Hondas are already up into positions 6 and 7. And those pit stops are absolutely critical. They're a little bit slower than what we're used to seeing in Group A touring cars, but here we have the view from the Leighton House Honda. This would be the Tony Farrell car on our sports cam.
Shows you just how tight is the track. This is the straight, not very long, going through the gearbox. Few of the cars actually ever hit their top gear down here. It's just too short. He's in 4th out of 5. He's going down again, as you can see, for the bend. Keeping a tight line in there, just touches the curb now, sharply in for the left-hander over the curb there. Feel the back wheel cock up in the air over the other curb. He's not worried about conserving tyres. He knows he's going to change them when he comes in for the stop, which should be around lap 75, halfway mark.
Then heads down the short pit straight into a very tight right-hander. Another short straight, another tight right-hander, and then slightly longer straight, about 200 metres. And then he comes into this corner that we mentioned a little earlier, the Michael in the Sand sweeper, and this seems to just go on and on and on. Some cars take 3 bites at that corner, then all of a sudden it stops, and you've got to come around to the right, brake hard, and into a tight right-hander at Penrite Corner.
And it's those long right-handers and the tight one that will mean excessive tyre wear on one side for the big cars. The Supras, certainly the Falcon, will be changing both tyres on that side every time they come in to refuel. So we've got car 3 leading from, at the moment, from car 10, which is, let me just run through the field for it if you like. 3 is the Toyota Supra, of course, of Peter Fitzgerald. He's leading from car 10, which is the Ken Douglas Supra. That's 1st and 2nd. In 3rd place is car number 8, which is David Morton in the Toyota Supra, running 3rd. Then 34 and 35, so it's 4th and 5th are the 2 little Honda CRXs of the Leighton House team, and behind them is car number 58, Kent Youlden, and 24, Ken Grinrod in a Commodore. They're the top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 cars running at the moment in the Yokohama Winton 300.
We just saw our race leader going past the David James Commodore, the car before, and it had a little excursion off the track.
Oh, they're cheeky, some of these little fellas, aren't they? Getting by the big fellas when the bends provide an opportunity, while the driver, having maybe just had a brief moment, has to gather himself together again and get it all back, and the little fellas nip by. They're like flies on a bread roll in summer, and it's summer here and it's hot here in the Winton 300.
Good to see a replay of that shot where Peter Fitzgerald goes on the inside, or tries to go on the inside of David James, and they might have just had a little bit of a touch, and David James goes right around, and certainly as he went around, Peter Fitzgerald just couldn't avoid him and gave him another little touch, and right around once again David James in the Commodore.
Well, that's a big moment for Peter Fitzgerald. He can't afford to have too many of those if he's to go through and achieve his ambition of being the first person ever to start from pole in this race.
Just having
and
a
win
close
it.
look at the front, Evan, there doesn't appear to be any damage to his car.
No, I think it was a real billiard shot, just a cannon off the cush. So, we've just seen Kent Youlden overtaken. He's now on a part of the circuit where he's working pretty hard, but when he gets clear, we'll see if we can have a chat to him and see how things are on board the Falcon. He's got a bend or two to go, and we might be able to have a word to him. Now things look much better. Kent Youlden, Evan Green here. Can you hear me?
Yes, Evan, I can hear you.
Can you hear me, Kent?
Yes, I can hear you.
I think he might be busy. Kent, we'll try once more. Operator, can you give me a line?
I can hear you, Evan.
Now, how's life out there, Kent?
Oh, it's going very well, Evan, for a big truck.
A big truck. It must be a handful. Those little Hondas are really flying, aren't they?
They're a bloody nuisance, I tell you. They're like ants around a honeypot.
Kent, you might just take us around a lap. Just tell us what you're doing, what speed, what gear you're in. Take us around one lap of Winton.
All right, well, we're in third gear now, through this little right-hand kink. We're heading up to the sweeper now. We'll probably do something like 145 k's through here now. So just feathering the throttle, just getting a nice little apex across this bit of concrete. Flat out across here into second gear. Hard on the brakes, we're in the tower. Nice smooth exit so we don't lose too much speed. At 5,000 in second, at 90 k's. Do a smooth, sharp here to get a nice fast entry onto the back straight. Smooth throttle application. Come right out on the edge. About 5.3 in second. Into third. Doing something like 150 k's up the end here. Still in third gear. Into the S's, sharp around here to get a nice exit onto the left-hander. Nice across the corner. Flat out across here, right out towards the tyres. Just clip the edge. Still in third gear. Hard on the brakes here. Plenty of torque in this engine, so you don't do much gear changing. Little bit of understeer there. Dab on the brake. Flat out across here in third. Cross the exit. Once again heading into the sweeper. Flat as a stick into it. Just a little bit of feather on the throttle here. Nice and easy across this apex again. Cross this one. Again, hard on the brakes. We're not losing ground to that big Supra with the hairdryer on the side, are we?
We've been travelling with Kent Youlden in the Dowsett Engineering Ford Falcon.
Tom, you've also done quite a number of racing miles around the Winton circuit. How does this heat affect the drivers?
Oh, as Evan was saying before, Ian, it takes a lot out of the drivers physically and mentally. You have to keep at it all the time. You're not given them much opportunity to relax, even much opportunity to look at your gauges. There is really only one chance, and that's down the straight, which is not all that long. But here it takes a lot out of physically in this heat. And looks like Peter Fitzgerald is in. Yes, indeed. This is what we have been expecting. Now, this will be absolutely crucial as Peter Fitzgerald comes into the pits, and we watch the team crew go to work on this car, taking the wheels off the passenger side, the ones that take the most punishment. Fuel will be going in at the same time. And a driver change? Not a driver change.
No, Peter Fitzgerald is staying in the car.
Now that's interesting. Well, that seems to indicate that they're going to do some calculations.
I think what it might mean, Tom, is that he's a bit worried about those two Honda CRXs, which are probably further placed up the field than he thought. He said, no, hang on, Peter, I'll do the next stint. I'm hot. I'll try and sprint this next one, then hand over to you with a margin that you can hold to the finish.
Yes, I think that's possibly the thing. And I think probably one of the most important things they want to know now is exactly what the fuel usage is in the temperature of the day. They were saying how much, or John Burke was telling us during practice, how much the temperature affects the consumption.
The tyres are on, but the tyres are the quick part. Now they've refueled it, so they did a faster stop than they thought. I had them in there for 1 minute and 20 seconds.
Yep.
They must put in just the 2 drums, because 3 would have kept me in over 1.5 minutes. So they've added 2 drums, which each take 32 seconds to go through. Then they've got to get 1 drum out and put the fuel in. So it's a pretty quick stop with tyres on, and Peter Fitzgerald surprisingly has elected to stay on board and just see if he can give himself a big margin before he finally has to hand over to co-driver Peter Dane.
So, Evan, after 61 laps, we've got a new race leader in the Yokohama Winton 300. Ken Douglas in the number 10 Toyota Supra has taken the lead and completed 61 laps. 34 goes through in second place. And, of course, that's the Honda CRX driven by Gary Walden. Number 3 goes through next, which is the Peter Fitzgerald car.
No, 35. I
Sorry,
think
35 did jump up one.
Yep. And we'll know very, very shortly how far Peter Fitzgerald has dropped, because as soon as he comes around, the computer will click up his position. Currently, it's showing him in 4th, but it hasn't completed a lap, and Ken Douglas is in. Ken Douglas is in the pits, car 10. Now, this is the other one we expected about this time, and we've been pretty good with our predictions so far. And this is our current late race leader, although as soon as car 34 goes past, he will take the lead, and he's about a half a lap away from doing that at the moment. Same sort of procedure happening on the Douglas car, and I'm trying to see whether he's having a driver change. No, it doesn't look as if he's having
Mark Gibbs has got in the car.
Oh, he's got in the car, right. Oh, yes, I can see now Ken Douglas helping him to buckle up.
And so, just going by there, Tom, is car 34. Now the new leader has gone. We have the Honda CRX actually leading the race at 35, a baby 200 metres behind in second place. So, first and second, the little cars. Now, can the big Toyota Supras make up the ground that they've lost in the pits, get back in the lead and get enough of a margin to cover for when the little Hondas go in for their one scheduled stop?
For their one scheduled stop, indeed.
The race has reached the most fascinating stage.
I really don't think they can. I haven't thought so all the time, and I've stuck my neck out all along and said that I expected one of the two leading CRXs to take this race, but purely on the logistics of pit stops. And, well, we'll just have to wait and see. As Evan says, a fascinating section of the race.
Already number 10 has been in the pits much longer than the leader. And Douglas has been in there, or his car rather, for over a minute and a half. They may be putting a bit more fuel in. They're just finishing off the last drum, and in fact they're even toying with the idea of adding a third lot of fuel to it, which they're going to add more fuel, so it's in there for a long time now.
Yep, that's full.
Yes,
the overflow test. 2
minutes they've been in, so that's 30 seconds more than the other. They're now on their way, but that the long stop. I think that we would probably discover that the previous Supra of Peter Fitzgerald didn't, almost lapped, didn't take on a full tank. I think he just put in the 2 drums and said it'll do till the next stop, because the consumption's pretty good.
Well, Peter Fitzgerald, in fact, has come out in 3rd place. Yes.
A very hot and bothered Ken Douglas has just stepped out of the Douglas Robinson Motorsport Toyota Supra in 2nd place. How's everything going so far?
No problems at all. Water temp was up about 108, which is about as high as we wanted to run it. Handling's good, brakes are good. Fitzy just got a bit of a break on me. Wasn't much I could do about it, really.
Fitzy stayed in his car. Is that a problem for you?
Well, no, it's not. Mark Gibbs and myself are very equal in time, so it doesn't really matter who's in our car. I guess Fitzy will be a bit hot and bothered himself by the end of the race.
So you expect to be faster than Peter Dane in the last shift?
Well, that might be an assumption some could draw.
We'll wait and see. Thanks, Ken.
Ken Douglas being very shy about saying, yes, I am quicker than Peter Dane. Whether he is or not, we'll see later in the race. Peter Fitzgerald.
He is now 32.5 seconds behind the leader, so he's made up quite a bit of time, but he has to make up those 30-odd seconds and then get well in front. And remembering all the time, of course, that the Honda has to make only one stop, and that's due fairly soon at somewhere around halfway mark, which is 75 laps. They're now, the leader has covered 72, so within the next 3 laps we'd expect to see the Hondas come in. Then Peter Fitzgerald will gallop to a lead, or so he would hope. What he has to do is go as fast as he can and stay in front and build up a margin, so when he comes in for his next stop, and we presume hands over to Peter Dane, they'll have built up enough margin to retain the lead when they get back on the track. But I think Ian Taylor, that's going to be doubtful. These two Hondas are going very, very well.
So smoothly. That's Gary Walden, our race leader, completing lap 73. Two more, and he's at halfway distance in the 1989 Yokohama Winton 300.
Well, the other thing, of course, that has to be taken into consideration, Ian and Evan, is that the two Hondas can't stop on the same lap, because that would prove to be very awkward in the pits. So therefore, they're going to have to stagger the changes. I'm trying to observe into the pits whether there's any preparation being made, and I can't quite pick it out yet. But they will stagger the two stops by the two Leighton House team cars, I'm sure. So it should be pretty soon that we'll see the leader coming in.
Which would you rather be, in the first car to come in for the stop or the second?
I think I'd rather be in the second.
Because the team will be nicely practiced.
Yes.
And they say, well, let's not do that again. In the pits at the moment, car number 55 is the Troy Nicholson Commodore. He's stopping. It seems to be a reasonably controlled, one could almost say leisurely stop. But they've got time. You can see the drum at the back, and they take, as we've mentioned before, 32 seconds per drum to empty out. So there's plenty of time to change wheels.
75 out of 150 laps. There's the Gary Walden car coming down the main straight.
He's got a good man to hand over to, Ian, too, and Glenn Seaton, one of our top touring car drivers. I mean, it's a very strong combination. So if Seaton gets in there and goes out and can certainly maintain the same pace that Gary Walden has, it's a pretty formidable sort of chase that they'll be setting to the others. He's coming in.
Yes.
Here he comes. Now, this is a critical stop. Let's watch him now. Walden bringing the car into the pit lane, driving out towards his pit, which is on the right-hand side of the track. In he goes. We'll put the stopwatch on, see how long he takes. They've started now.
The door was open, and yes, Gary Walden half out of the car before the car actually stopped. This team has practiced this stop on many, many occasions, Saturday after Saturday, day after day. In the last 2 or 3 days, they've been practicing probably 20 times a day. Gary Walden helping young Glenn Seaton, one of the country's best touring car drivers, to get into his full harness seatbelt, make sure that he's quite comfortable, attaching the two-way radio system that they have, communicating them back to their pits at all times.
A third drum going in, so they're really topping it right up. You can see one helping the other. The driver's now in place, strapped, and now Walden getting out clean the windscreen. He knows just how bad it is because he's had to endure all the bugs that have been squashed on the glass over the last 75 laps. Now he comes and washes it down and gives us a chamois over. Only does one half. He knows he doesn't need the other half of the screen. They're still putting fuel in. The tyre change has been completed on both sides of the front. There's still a man working at the back, although I don't think they've changed the back wheels. No, he's just helping the refueling. Back tyres unchanged. They'll tie it in. This has been a stop of 1 minute 10 seconds. Now,
that's very good.
Goodness me. For one stop, that is impressive.
Well, that's 20 seconds faster than the quick stop that Peter Fitzgerald had, and well over a minute quicker than the stop of the other Supra. So that is rather dismaying news for the other teams. A really good stop by the standards of Group E racing, bearing in mind that they're restricted to using ordinary wheel braces and those slow cans, but that was a great stop. And now we have young Glenn Seaton in the car, one of the quickest drivers in the country, and he'll take some catching, I would think.
Yes, and 35, of course, now Tony Farrell will be in the lead in car 35. And almost immediately the final preparations are made for that car to come in as well. I see Andrew Newton looking at the window of our box here. I can see Andrew Newton all kitted up, ready to go into that car. So I would say probably on this lap.
Tony Farrell goes through once again, so has now completed 80 laps and still hasn't come into the pits for his fuel stop, driver change and tyre change. Although we can tell you that his pit crew are more than ready, with his co-driver Andrew Newton fully rigged up with helmet on, just waiting for Tony to come in.
One good thing, Ian, that might favour Peter Fitzgerald is that there's now a little bit of cloud in the sky and the temperature has dropped slightly, which will favour the turbocharged Supers, because the one thing they dreaded was really hot conditions. You know, the turbo does generate heat. You can see the driver waiting for this change. The turbo does generate heat, and so the cooler the day, the better their chances. Still a hot day, but there is some cloud. Let's wait and see, though, whether the driver waiting here for 35 to come in, Andrew Newton, whether in fact Tony Farrell is coming in this time. I think he must be, because the driver is ready and waiting, helmet strapped on, and with so much heat around, he wouldn't have his helmet on and already done up unless he intended to get in the car very, very quickly.
Tony Farrell's just come towards the end of the main straight. See a little flicker from his right-hand indicator.
Yes.
The hand goes up. Tony Farrell, our current race leader, the second of the Leighton House Honda CRXs, comes in for his scheduled pit stop. He has to go right down to the far end of the pit road. He has stopped. We have the clocks running. The door is open. Andrew Newton is ready to get into the car. Tony gets out a little slowly. I don't blame him because it's very, very hot in any of the cabins of these cars running here at Winton today.
Kent Yulden has just stepped out of his Ford Falcon and strapped his brother Red in. How's the car going, Kent?
It's going very well. The last 7 or 8 laps we had some fuel surge, so we hope to get past the halfway point, which we've done. I think we're on lap 77 or 80 or something. So it's been going very well. It's been consistently lapping. But hang on to the faster cars there for quite a while. I was rather pleased about. Hasn't got a problem.
You make it look easy on sports cam.
Do I? I might apply for a job on the... No, the car's quite comfortable to drive. It's quite relaxed. You've just got to drive it smoothly and accurately, and don't create too much of your own drama.
Okay, thanks very much, Kent Yulden. He has driven a Ford lately.
What you said earlier, Evan, it looks like he's wanting to take over our job.
Yes. Well, he's done a great job, and one of the great factors, I think, of that performance was that he was able to nurse the car, which he obviously was doing so well, so they could just do the one stop. I mean, it takes a special sort of driver to back off marginally and save maybe, a quarter of a second a lap, just to save enough fuel to go more than half distance. He's done that. He's now handed the car over to his brother, said you needn't stop again, and that's an enormous factor because their main rivals in terms of size, the Supras, will have to stop at least once more. Well, the field's been shuffled around, and now we have back in the lead after 84 laps, car 3, Peter Fitzgerald, still driving the Toyota Supra. He's in front. A second Supra is in second place. That's car number 10, Mark Gibbs, now at the wheel of the car that Ken Douglas was driving before. And then in third place is car number 34, the first of the quite remarkable little Honda CRXs with Glenn Seaton at the wheel. And I'll be interested to see what his times are like. He's a pretty quick little driver. And then car 35, the one we're watching now, in fourth place. So with 33 laps to go, Peter Fitzgerald have a pretty fair indication of how much quicker he should be going than the Honda in order to gain that buffer he needs for the lap stop. And I'd say he'd be a worried man because he's finding it hard to catch that car. He is catching Seaton, but little by little, but not with the ease which he would expect if he's going to allow himself that extra stop. So he'd be worried. I mean, he is in front, and he's almost a lap in front, as you can see.
Well, he was gaining on the Hondas at a second a lap in the early part of the race, and that would be the pace he would have to maintain. Now, he's certainly working hard. There's no two ways about that. We can see that from here. But the result is not happening.
Now, what he will have to think about, and he sort of runs the team, he has a good manager, but he's the dominant force there. What he will have to decide is how much fuel is going in. That's been done by others. They will have worked out his consumption from the first stint, and the fewer drums they can put in, the better. They'll have that accurately measured. They say, right, we'll bring him in with 30 laps to go, and he'll need 1.5 drums, or maybe 1. I don't know whether they get by with that. And they'll look very carefully whether they should even change a tyre, because they might want to do that in case something goes wrong with the tyre change and they drop 10 seconds through fumbling with a nut, not getting on the stud properly. So this last stop is going to be so important for them.
Is when you think in terms of that, it's so fraught with danger. I mean, just the simplest thing of just dropping a wheel nut and having to bend and pick it up and put it on again. There's about 5 hard laps by the driver. It's shaving fractions of a second off, just gone, just like that.
Just how critical it is. Peter Fitzgerald was telling us earlier this morning that he suggested to his tyre changes to use a slightly different type of wheel brace to change the tyre. The tyre changer didn't particularly want to, but he did anyway. In doing so, the tyre change improved by some 7 seconds. That's incredible, just by a different wheel brace.
Well, he is not gaining. He's picking up fractions. He's not gaining at the rate he should. A little bit quicker down the straight, but on the corners, Seaton is hurling that Honda around, maintaining the lead. I don't know how much driver exhaustion comes into it as well, because Seaton is fairly fresh. He's been in there since the change for something like, what's he done, maybe 20 laps, something like that, so he's still pretty fresh. He now knows where the track is, whereas Peter Fitzgerald's been there all day. He's been there for the whole race. He has driven 118 laps, and that's an exhausting job out there. He's done a superb job, but look at it now. This will be interesting. They're approaching traffic. What he'll be hoping is that Seaton gets a little balked and allows him to have a flyer to get up and past. Let's see what happens. They've got a Celica there just in front. A lot will depend on how they can get by these cars, a whole bunch of different vehicles. But it's the Supra that does have the greater instant power, although he's staying behind a little longer, drawing up, getting right up on the tail of the Celica before he pulls in. He's made up a bit of ground then. He's right up now on the tail of Seaton as they come into the bends. Seaton will now try and get away from him again on the really tight stuff and get past these other cars before Fitzgerald gets behind and gets the tow and gets a slingshot effect and passes them all.
Yes, well, he's not going to get him before the first bend out of the pit straight, so that's going to slow him up. And Fitzgerald finds himself right on the bumper, but they've gone down through there pretty well. The Commodore in front of them got through that first corner pretty well. And now Seaton gets a chance around the outside of the sweeper. That's the Max Bonney car again. Whoops, tucks right in underneath and says bumps.
I was about to say, that's suicide territory out there. I'm glad he decided to change his mind, or we might have had to worry about whether they were going to have a contest between these cars. Now he's trying again, but the three abreast, there's no room for two cars there, let alone three. And look at the traffic. Fitzgerald goes side on there. He had to swing wide to avoid one of those cars that was wagging its tail. So this is really difficult motoring. Neither of these two, neither Seaton nor Fitzgerald, can afford to lose time. And they're up against a whole stack of cars. That's Paul Fordham in the Commodore just in front. And he's just about to be passed now by this pair, Seaton. And now look at the sinister shape of the Supra of Fitzgerald. Look, three abreast they go. This is where the Supra gets up close, doesn't quite pass. There's another car to get by in front, and the Commodore's there as well. It's pretty frantic out there.
The car in front, in fact, is car 10.
Car in second place, which is going into the pits. So he's pulled out to go into the pits.
Yes, that was the car that they had to pass, and it was interesting to see them closing up on that car.
Out on the track, the lights are up to say, I want to get by. It doesn't mean a thing by now. Oh, a great puff of smoke from Seaton. I think it was a locked up rear tyre. On the corner, the back left wheel lifts up. Oh, and something's happened. Fitzgerald slowed right down, was past then. Now, what happened? He slowed right down. Maybe a missed gear change. Something went on, and he lost quite a lot of time there. Dropped back, was passed by the Commodore. He seems to be all right again, but for an instant, he slowed down.
I wonder whether he had fuel surge.
If it's fuel surge, he's got to get into the pits then and change. That's the warning sign. And it's about time for fuel surge. They were expecting every 60 laps. He's done 120. That's the second 60. So it could well be fuel surge, and that could have been disastrous had he touched that Commodore. Luckily, as you can see here,
team's ready in pit road, Evan, for Peter Fitzgerald, as we see the number 10 car of Ken Douglas rejoin the race. Waiting now for...
Into the pits he goes, I think.
Fitzgerald.
Yes, he's going in. He's coming in pretty quickly too, and this is going to be a most important stop.
We've got the watch on this stop, and there couldn't be a more critical pit stop in the whole race than this one, I believe.
He's been in 10 seconds. Fuel going in. It'll take 32 for this first run. They're checking the back tyres. If they can not, that's okay. So that one doesn't have to be changed. So if they leave the tyres on, it'll make a big difference. So it's just fuel, just fuel. Another 5 seconds before the drum is due to run out. It's out. They've got a fairly quick go. Second one's going in. They probably weren't waiting for the dregs to be taken on board.
As John Burke takes his Supra out, he probably hear the noise of the car as it went past the car we're concentrating on.
45 seconds. Second drum going in. The helper about to pull out the plastic lead.
The little CRX is already at the end of the main straight, coming into the deluxe coaches S's.
Yes, two's all they're going to put in, Ian.
And he's away. He's going to come out ahead of the Honda CRX of Glenn Seaton by about 30 or 40 metres.
Well, now...
A 1 minute stop.
Well, now we have an absolutely fascinating situation. He's got to build up to speed, and that distance will shrink even more. It would be about 100 metres.
It's on the 133rd lap of the race that they're pulling up these cars in front. Here they come now. They'll be onto them so soon. Well, Seaton must be staying back there, trying to work out. He's got a good tactical brain. He'd be trying to work out what he should do. Rather than rush by now, he's saying, OK, now when is he going to reach that first car? Which side will he try and get on? Well, Dane just went straight by. He saw a gap and he aimed it and fired like a cannon. He went by 2 cars, and that was 0.1 to Dane. He made a better use of those traffic there. He got by the Peugeot, but now Seaton's got by, but he lost a bit of ground, and there's another car now. There's a Celica between the two of them, and it's into the bends, and there's a bit of dust there, and that's another point in favour of Dane. He's got away, and there's a Celica to get by, which is a more powerful car than the CRX, but the CRX goes by anyhow. He's all wound up now, and the other driver lets him through, to his credit, so the battle is resumed. But there's no doubt that Dane did the better of that. He's still got a couple of cars to pass, but he has just slightly opened up the margin, having a better run through there. He used his brain very well, and that was a good run by Peter Dane through. But look at the traffic in front of him now, and that pause that he struck as he runs into the S's is sufficient to allow young Glenn Seaton once more to come right up on his tail. And look at this situation. There's a big wide Commodore there.
That's the Falcon of the Youlden brothers that's just in front there with our onboard sports cam camera, and I wonder whether we might just get a look at this. And indeed we do. And there's the leader, just gone past, and has, oops, right across in front of the second place car goes the Falcon.
Thank you very much. Where are you, Glenn Seaton? I'm behind the Falcon, and it's so wide I can't get by. That's what he's saying. Now, we won't pass him on the straight, surely. But, yeah, look, now, Dane is drawing away. The Falcon's still there. No sign of Glenn Seaton. Another broad car, the Commodore up in front of Turbo. Let's see where they are now. There he is. He's now 1 car back. He's got by the Falcon, and I think the Falcon driver waved him by. Youlden waved him by, but there's no point in holding up the leader. So that was good, courteous driving by Brett Youlden.
That's the 35 car. Andrew Newton behind the wheel, and that's our Duckham's Oils sports cam. Andrew Newton, it's Ian Taylor in main control. Can you hear us?
Hi, Ian.
Andrew, you're running about 58 seconds behind Glenn Seaton, who is doing an absolutely magnificent job. You probably can't see it from where you are, but he's right on the tail of Peter Dane at the moment.
Yeah, I've been watching it, Ian, for the last few laps, quite frankly. He's doing very well, and obviously Peter's not getting away from him, and with a stop to make, these little Duckham's Oils cars are just keeping on going. Hope I don't sound too much like Dick Johnson, but they go very well, and all being well, it's going to be a 1-2.
Well, you're quite confident that Peter Dane has to come in for another splash of petrol.
Well, someone has to.
And it certainly won't be a Honda.
That's for sure, Ian.
Well, Andrew, if that does happen, then we're going to see the Hondas 1-2. They did fill the Peter Fitzgerald car right up to the brim with petrol when Peter Dane took over. They don't know that they have to stop, or they weren't confident that they'd have to make a third stop prior to the race. Let's see what happens in the next few laps.
Been a great day for the Japanese. Absolutely dominant in this Group E racing. Oh, Glenn Seaton very wide there, as he has been a few times there. That's not a measure of anything other than his sheer desperation. He's going in there so hard. You may not get the full impact of the speed of cornering of these cars, but they're going desperately hard through the corners.
And here is about the only place I think that Seaton is going to be successful if he gets half an opportunity. And he's only got to do it four more times. That's Dane has to hold him out 4 more times in that corner, and I think the race is Peter Fitzgerald and Peter Dane's. I can't see anywhere else where Glenn Seaton can get through.
Unless there's a mistake made here. He's very good around this part, but Dane, although he hangs the tail, which of course is good driving, just can't get away from him there. On the straights, he can draw away a little bit, but not far enough to break the toe. Seaton is still there.
Even whilst the Japanese have dominated the first 5 positions, Australian cars look like coming in 6th and 7th. We've got a Commodore that we haven't seen a great deal of all day. It's the 55 car of Troy Nicholson and Ben Ruggles in 6th spot, and in 7th is the Youlden brothers EA Falcon. So 2 Australian cars in 6th, 7th, and again in 8th place, the 86 car, another Commodore the Gary and Warren Smith entry.
Well, so we haven't seen much of it. There it is. We're looking now at the car 55, Troy Nicholson, Ben Ruggles. And yes, as often in the new VN Commodore, which is great, as often happens, we get so transfixed by the battle for the front that we tend to just not see some of those who fought their way up through the field. They were quite a long way down early on, but they've really struggled on to do very well.
One of the
55 now up in 6th place, which is a great effort.
One of the little Suzukis is going to end up in the top 10. That's Charlie Anderson and Tom Watkinson in the Suzuki GTI. The number 87 car is in 9th spot, and rounding off the top 10 is number 40. And that, of course, is the Honda CRX of local driver, Shepparton driver Lou Renato and Dominic Beninka from Melbourne.
The first 4 cars all on the same lap. They've all completed 147 in this 150 lap race, so there aren't many to go, and the battle still rages for top spot, and there's still Peter Dane just leading Glenn Seaton. Two laps to go, 2 desperate laps to go. Seaton is again close, right up on the tail of Dane. Now they come swinging into this long, tortuous left-hander. Dane does very well through there. Draws away a little bit because he can put power down. Now under braking, this is the part of the circuit for the next 500 metres where the Honda does better.
Well, I think quite conclusively, according to Nigel's figures, we're going to establish one new factor in this race, Evan. The closest winning margin has been 6.7 seconds was the closest margin. That was last year. It's certainly going to be closer than that.
Well, from the front, it looks as though Seaton's pulled down to pass. In fact, that's the situation. He's pulled out to see where the car's gone. Now again, he has to do it all again. This has been the case for the last 50 laps. Round he goes, tries to draw up. He must be on the tail of the car as they come to the start-finish straight. He is. And with 1 lap to go, this is the situation. Peter Dane just leading Glenn Seaton. Now, where is he going to try? What can he do? He's had to go everywhere around the circuit. He's got to be close here. He is close.
He's got one shot, I think, at Penrite Corner, the one they're coming around after this sweeper. If he can get close enough right here, as they come to this corner, he can get through. And will he do it? Will Peter Dane leave an opening? Once. Pulls right over to the inside. He's done it for the last 20 laps, once he learnt that he shouldn't go wide there. And that really, I think, is the only place that Seaton had a show of getting through.
He's trying. He could get by there if only Dane will give him room, which he's not going to do quite legitimately. Now on the straight, now the power of the turbocharged 6, and there's a little group of cars in front. Whether they'll be there still by the time they get to the line, I don't know, but I think Dane will have to pass maybe one. He's getting pretty close. You can see them. Only a matter of 200 or 300 metres to go, and Dane's still in front. Seaton just behind, making one last desperate effort, but he doesn't have the power, and it'll be Peter Dane who wins. He takes it for the Peter Fitzgerald Toyota Supra. What a magnificent race, and behind him, and only a fraction of a second back, was Glenn Seaton in the first of the Honda CRXs.
The winning co-driver of the 89 Yokohama 300 endurance race, Peter Fitzgerald. How do you feel, mate?
Fantastic.
What was harder, driving the car for 2.5 hours or sitting here and watching Peter Dane bring it home?
Well, it was hard on the body driving for the 2 hours, but the other one was harder on the nerves, and they come in as a par, I think.
So there's going to be a big party in the Yokohama team tonight?
You can bet it. You can bet. I should thank all my crew for the great job they did in the pits. It's fantastic. And to Yokohama for their fine sponsorship. Thank you very much.
Okay, congratulations, mate.
In first place, these are all provisional, of course. First place is car number 3, the Peter Fitzgerald Peter Dane Toyota Supra. Second, car 34, the entrant Tony Farrell, the driver Glenn Seaton and Gary Walden in a Honda CRX. In third place, car 35, Tony Farrell and Andrew Newton in the second of the Honda CRXs, so a great day for the little Hondas. In fourth place, car number 10, another Toyota Supra, Douglas Robinson Motorsport, Ken Douglas and Mark Gibbs, the driver. Well, that's it, a magnificent Yokohama Winton 300. This is Evan Green on behalf of my fellow commentators, Ian Taylor, Tom Norton and Phil Brannigan saying thank you for joining us. I hope you've enjoyed the action as much as we have in bringing it to you.